Non-Americans, what are your thoughts on Trump and how he affects your country? I live in northeastern Scotland. My partner is from Balmedy. I will never ever forget the harassment they put pensioners through to bully them into selling their generational homes so he could build a golf course. How he destroyed part of our coastline. How he still gets his goons to bully the one guy who didn't sell up. The one who raises the Mexican flag when they're about. I hate the man, not just for his abhorrent politics, but for how he was as a person before his political career. To quote the late Janie Godley, Trump is a cunt. I hear you. Some years ago, I watched a documentary about the building of that golf course. Can't remember the name of it, sorry. I'm in Australia, but it really affected me, and I've disliked Trump intensely from then on. When asked back in 2019 why the British don't like Trump, Nate White wrote the following, which puts it perfectly IMO, although he's clearly even worse this time round. A few things spring to mind. Trump lacks certain qualities which the British traditionally esteem. For instance, he has no class, no charm, no coolness, no credibility, no compassion, no wit, no warmth, no wisdom, no subtlety, no sensitivity, no self-awareness, no humility, no honor, and no grace. All qualities, funnily enough, with which his predecessor, Mr. Obama, was generously blessed. So for us, the stark contrast does rather throw Trump's limitations into embarrassingly sharp relief. Plus, we like a laugh. And while Trump may be laughable, he has never once said anything wry, witty, or even faintly amusing. Not once, ever. I don't say that rhetorically, I mean it quite literally. Not once, not ever. And that fact is particularly disturbing to the British sensibility. For us, to lack humor is almost inhuman. But with Trump, it's a fact. He doesn't even seem to understand what a joke is. His idea of a joke is a crass comment, an illiterate insult, a casual act of cruelty. Trump is a troll, and like all trolls, he is never funny and he never laughs. He only crows or jeers, and scarily, he doesn't just talk in crude, witless insults, he actually thinks in them. His mind is a simple bot-like algorithm of petty prejudices and knee-jerk nastiness. There is never any underlayer of irony, complexity, nuance, or depth. It's all surface. Some Americans might see this as refreshingly upfront. Well, we don't. We see it as having no inner world, no soul. And in Britain, we traditionally side with David, not Goliath. All our heroes are plucky underdogs. Robin Hood, Dick Whittington, Oliver Twist. Trump is neither plucky nor an underdog. He is the exact opposite of that. He's not even a spoiled rich boy or a greedy fat cat. He's more a fat white slug, a Jabba the Hutt of privilege. And worse, he is that most unforgivable of all things to the British, a bully. That is, except when he is among bullies. Then, he suddenly transforms into a sniveling sidekick instead. There are unspoken rules to this stuff, the Queensberry rules of basic decency, and he breaks them all. He punches downwards, which a gentleman should, would, could never do. And every blow he aims is below the belt. He particularly likes to kick the vulnerable or voiceless, and he kicks them when they are down. So the fact that a significant minority, perhaps a third, of Americans look at what he does, listen to what he says, and then think, yeah, he seems like my kind of guy, is a matter of some confusion and no little distress to British people. Given that, Americans are supposed to be nicer than us, and mostly are. You don't need a particularly keen eye for detail to spot a few flaws in the man. This last point is what especially confuses and dismays British people, and many other people too. His faults seem pretty bloody hard to miss. After all, it's impossible to read a single tweet, or hear him speak a sentence or two, without staring deep into the abyss. He turns being artless into an art form. He is a Picasso of pettiness, a Shakespeare of shit. His faults are fractal, even his flaws have flaws, and so on ad infinitum. God knows there have always been stupid people in the world, and plenty of nasty people too, but rarely has stupidity been so nasty, or nastiness so stupid. He makes Nixon look trustworthy, and George W. look smart. In fact, if Frankenstein decided to make a monster assembled entirely from human flaws, he would make a Trump. And a remorseful Dr. Frankenstein would clutch out big clumpfuls of hair and scream in anguish, "My God, what have I created?" If being a twat was a TV show, Trump would be the boxed set. Trump's shittiness is so obvious that as a literary character, he would be seen as a product of sloppy writing. LOL, that is so true though. There's truly no depth, they were right. You couldn't even use him as a character inspiration. The audience would 100% think it was terrible. Simple writing, nothing interesting, no inner conflict, No complex rise to villainy. Just simple, straightforward incompetence and cruelty. No intelligent thoughts, no monologue by our villain at the end before the hero rises. Just cruelty. For the point of cruelty. Actually, he would be a comic character. God, I wish I could be as poetic as that. He is absolutely bang on with that assessment. It's not that some Americans don't see his character. It's that they are willing to overlook it because he is intent on inflicting harm to the people that they have had to hate in secret. This. Trump simply represents the lowest dregs of our humanity and makes them feel normal for it. This is exquisitely accurate. Edit. Before you start banging on about 1776, I meant this is an accurate reflection of the British view. Calm down. Damn. No one does insults, chuch, reason you suck speeches quite like the British. You all have a real talent for being utterly acerbic while sounding classy and academic, as if expounding on the flaws of something is a scientific exercise. Well, holy cow, that is the most accurate takedown of Trump I have ever read. Fucking savage. That might be one of the best insults I've ever heard. Canadian nurse here. The whole Trump era changed how my patients talk about healthcare. Whenever they complain about wait times, they quickly add, "But at least we're not paying American prices." It's become our go-to comfort phrase. Loving how clean your plate, there's starving kids in Africa became. Be grateful for your healthcare. There's insane medical debt in America. What a time? Finish your eggs. There are starving Americans who can't afford eggs. Enjoy not having smallpox, measles, or polio. Americans aren't so lucky. You forgot tuberculosis? We're going back to when diseases were great again. Let's go Black Death. Saving this comment to show people when they claim that all Canadians hate free healthcare, LOL. The US is working on catching up to those vilified wait times. BT Data's clinics and hospitals are being consolidated for more profit, and we've already got a shortage of doctors. It used to take a month or two to get into high-demand specialists. 15 years ago. Now it can be 6 to 9 months, or more. That's just cases I know of. And then we have to wonder if our insurance will pay or not, which is always a crapshoot. As an Aussie, it's horrible looking on and seeing a president making moves indistinguishable from what it would look like if Russia planted an agent in the top job. Our values are no longer aligned. We can no longer trust. And given our defense and security is reliant on reciprocal trust, it's alarming to know that unthinkable arguments for non-intervention and betrayal are now possible in Trump's world of expediency and blackmail. He's pretty much using the threat of violence by Russia to try to economically blackmail a minerals deal out of Ukraine right now. That's collusion and extortion. It's like losing the friend you looked up to a drug addiction. They're not rational, but you're powerless to stop them destroying themselves. It's sad. Australians need to keep Dutton out. He's smarter than Trump and more nefarious. Dutton knows the rules and he knows politics. He's a threat because he has a head on his shoulder. Trump is just a puppet who wants fame and doesn't care who dies to get it. Which is why Australians need to understand the urgency of the upcoming election and not vote for the coalition. Dutton has already made it clear he aligns with Trump. We don't want what is happening to the US to happen to us. Queensland already lived through 19 years, 1968 to 87, of Joe Bjelke-Petersen as premier, who was a prototype for Trump, complete with fascist tendencies, extended terms, corruption, silencing the media, an SS-style police force, a lack of intelligence, a God complex, and much more. They even look physically similar. Peter Dutton is an ex-cop thug who served in the Queensland Police Service directly after the Bjelke-Petersen era. Undeniably the most corrupt, fascist, and racist police force in the country. Still to this day, see the Fitzgerald Inquiry and the Pinkenba 6, Dutton's close colleagues, and he's every inch a product of the culture and politics of that time. He is not to be trusted. We need to be careful not to follow in their footsteps and ruin the Aussie way of life, but there are so many Trump fans here, it's scary. It's truly shocking how many people here see what's happening in the US and say, yeah, let's do that. It's worse than this. Our defense arrangements are incredibly reliant on a trustworthy US. We share so much in common that the behavior of Trump and his associates is like a family disagreement. I feel like America has gone from being an older brother who will always be there for you, to being an abusive brother who will get their way one way or another and will hurt you if you speak out about it. Well, since he keeps referring to my prime minister as a governor and is trying to annex my country, my thoughts aren't great. That said, he has done something that hasn't happened in a long time. He has united Canada. He has forced us to diversify our trading partners and to start shopping Canadian over American. We're going to take a bit of a hit initially, but I truly believe that our economy is going to strengthen as a result of his bungled tactics. As a person, I think he is hateful, racist, transphobic, and incompetent, and I truly hope that when he dies, he realizes that he was the villain all along. Oddly, he has probably saved the federal Liberals from complete collapse and legacy of Trudeau. Instead, he will end on a high of uniting the country and taking a strong stance against Trump. Trump is only looking at the now and the immediate impacts of how his actions benefit himself and his billionaire buddies, not understanding or caring about the long-term impacts of how this will affect the status of the U.S. long-term, well after he is gone. He is a small man, and his lasting legacy will not be one marked by anything positive. And for a man who seems to be obsessed with the thought of legacy and his own importance, I really want him to know just how negative his impact is. Trump will never understand that or care. He'll die thinking he's a beloved king. He's a narcissist who is incapable of self-reflection, and I see no evidence he's ever done it once in his entire life, whether it be from his personal failings or his business failures or his miserable first term as president. Trump is a malignant narcissist. That is a far more dangerous animal than your run-of-the-mill narcissist. If you look up the definition, it is terrifying. The bottom line is that every dictator has been a malignant narcissist. I've got a psych background. It's normally dicey to assign a diagnosis to someone just based on their public persona, but he checks all the observable criteria for clinical narcissism. So firmly, I would bet my life he qualifies for the diagnosis. He's too easily manipulated by flattery for it to be an act he uses to gain the upper hand. And what I know of his father's parenting style, it's easy to see how a child raised that way would end up as a narcissist. At their core, real narcissists actually feel crippling worthlessness, so they reflexively cast themselves as better than everyone else, a picture of perfection. It's not just what they portray to the outside world, it's what they tell themselves as well, to avoid facing the crippling pain they'd otherwise be consumed with. Their feelings of grandiosity are a desperate defense mechanism to avoid feeling pain that's so profound they don't otherwise know how to deal with it. It's a lifelong, desperate, daily attempt to prove to their parents, their detractors, and especially that inner darkness, see, you're wrong, I'm not worse than everyone else, I'm better than everyone else. There are no accomplishments big enough to relieve the deep down self-loathing because they aren't actually processing those feelings of utter inadequacy. So no, narcissists don't actually self-reflect. The closest they come to that is repeating their rationalizations to themselves to justify their inflated opinions of themselves. Trump thinks naming everything after him will make future generations think he was a great man. Long after we're all gone, history books will teach of him as the snake he is. It will be far worse than that. He'll go down as America's wannabe Hitler, and the Trump name will be cursed just the same evermore. Trump has definitely secured his place in history. The US has been in an unprecedented center of world's military, stability, media, finance, and trade for a century. They literally needed to do nothing different, and their position was set. They brought in far more money in this role from the rest of the world with comparatively little effort. Instead, they are actively having the world go around them now with instability, isolationist tactics, and burning all the bridges behind them. This isolationist practice had another name, the Great Depression, and it wasn't until the US became a reliable world player that they shrugged that off. I hope that the US can recover and reinstitute a strong democracy. They have been great allies for a long time, barring the last decade or so. Careful you don't rely on this. Trump has emboldened the far right. It's happening here in the UK with Farage. Keep fighting it. Did you see the clip of Liz Truss yesterday at something political in the US? She actually said that Brits want Trump and Musk. No way, not ever. I had very little respect for her anyway, but to include me as a Brit in her sweeping statement, take her citizenship away and don't let her back. She loves Trump. She can stay there. When I saw that, furious was not the word. Agree with all of this. Trump has united Canada and really ignited Canadian pride in a way I've never seen before. Last night's game felt like one of the biggest games of my lifetime, and I watched my team win the Stanley Cup when I was 10 in overtime. The only thing I will ever be thankful to Trump for is uniting this country and making us work harder to be self-sufficient. Vive le Canada. Speaking of the French language, even Quebec is in solidarity with Canada. I don't think a lot of non-Canadians understand how much you have to piss of Quebec to make them proudly Canadian and in solidarity with the rest of the country. Quebec is hilarious, half the time completely based, the other half completely unhinged. But by God, I'm proud of having them here and being Canadian. I'm sure I was reading recently about a French professor of French who was denied a working visa in Quebec because she couldn't prove she was fluent in French. He's had a similar effect on Mexico too. The president of Mexico has stepped up in a way that I've never known. Sadly, I've been disillusioned with my own country for years. I married an Englishman and suddenly I started to see the rest of the world. Solidarity, my friend. I actually was born and raised in Texas, married a Canadian man, and have been in Canada for 10 years, and almost 1 year a citizen. Yay! I never understood some of the hatred for the US until I was on the outside looking in. I may have been born an American, but I will sure as shit die a proud Canadian. As a human being, I love this for all of Canada. As an American, I'm jealous. I'm also woefully ashamed of our country and what it's become and who was elected. I mostly feel badly for all the good, normal Americans I know who are just trying to live their lives. They didn't ask for any of this and are likely ashamed to be represented on the global stage by such an awful bunch of bozos. I appreciate those of you that remember that plenty of us Americans not only voted against him 3 times, but actively campaigned and volunteered against him, participated in protests against him, etc. He truly is not my president. I loathe the man. That being said, I don't blame people who lump us all together and say WTF Americans because yeah, we fucking did this to ourselves. It's insane how the mainstream media didn't cover all those protests on President's Day. Absolutely disgusting. Yep, only videos that people were taking on their phones. Not a single peep from any media outlet that I saw. This is refreshing. Not everyone hates all of us. I want to say that it wasn't all of us, but it feels like I'm just passing blame, and I don't like doing that. The funny thing is that I'm not even old enough to vote, and my own family wouldn't listen to me, let alone a whole country. As a Canadian on Reddit, I still love a third of you. Seeing this helps make me feel just a little bit better, that we're not completely alone. Thank you. Seriously. I'm sorry my country's full of fucking idiots who want to destroy our international family. Hopefully we get it together sooner rather than later, before we end up actually creating irreparable physical damage. I know the mental scars will remain, and rightly so. We fucked up, and we deserve to be reminded of it. Much love from an actual American who just wants the world to be at peace, and not consumed by the 1% fascist, pedophilic, misogynistic, egotistical, conservative populist cult. It may be that not everyone hates all Americans, but people are losing empathy for you. Trump 1.0 seemed like an aberration. But Trump 2.0 was a clear choice made in the full knowledge of who Trump and his cronies are. So when Trump does his thing and inflicts harm at every turn, a lot of people are starting to think, well, this is what your country wanted. What did they expect would happen? I'm Canadian, and I have friends in the US. One lives in Canada because she married a Canadian. Her friends messaged her saying, "You're lucky you got out when you did," which is a sad statement to make about your own country. I really do feel for them. I'm from Russia, and some may think Russians adore Trump, and some brainwashed really do. But I despise this POS. I despise this POS for what he does to Ukraine. I despise him for what he does to Europe. I despise this POS for him kissing Putin's ass and call this bastard an ally. I think life will never be the same. I'm afraid rough time is coming for the whole world now. I never liked the US really, but now I hate them. American here. I despise Putin. But I have nothing against Russian people in general. And I would assume a lot, perhaps even most Russians, despise Putin. The people controlling our countries do not necessarily define us as individuals. I'm British, and I think he is loathsome. He doesn't seem to have a soul. You never see him happy with his family. He seems utterly toxic to everyone and every conversation. He has no class at all. His inner monologue must be utterly vile and hate-ridden. Thank you for watching. Write comments, put likes. Do not forget to watch other videos.